Yo, welcome back guys to the channel. Today we're going to go over some R6 settings as I have missed a few seasons, I feel like, since I uploaded, but more so since I've done one of these setting videos. Now I know it's been a minute since you've seen a video from this channel, but I want to just stay up to date on all of the best settings, tips, and things of that nature. That's what this channel was meant to be when it started, and that's what it still is. I don't want to give repeat content, so I don't just force content out there. As for the settings though, let's get into it. I want to start off with the Windows settings just before you get into the game. This is the good stuff that people don't show you that does really affect the gameplay, honestly. So we're going to go over this pretty fast. If you need to be slower, just pause the video, rerun the video. I want you guys to go to your bottom left, hit on the Windows and hit game mode. Click on game mode, and you want your game mode on for the most part. This is going to give you a few FPS either way, even if you're on NVIDIA or AMD. AMD sometimes though is a little glitchy, so I'll check it and test it. If it does feel weird after you put game mode on, maybe switch it off and just test the differences. But in general, game mode does help your FPS out a little bit. Now I want you to go over here, hit graphics settings, and I want you guys to find your Rainbow Six game. I can't tell you where yours is. I have a file that I save all my games to, and that's where mine is, but you're gonna want to hit Rainbow Six or Vulkan. If you use Vulkan, just click that, hit options, and then hit high performance mode, and then click save. Now before we get into the in-game settings, which is going to make a very big change in however your settings are set up, but I want to talk about Vulkan versus normal. Whenever you launch your game, you're going to see an option, Vulkan or normal. Most people just hit the normal one, but Vulkan is huge. Now this thing is going to push your computer a little bit more, and some people have heating issues when they use Vulkan because it really does get the most out of your computer. My temps definitely do rise, but they don't rise unsafe. It's just they do rise. But as you guys can see, when you're talking low settings, there is a massive difference between Vulkan versus normal, which is DX11. Our average FPS with Vulkan here was 286, while with DX11 it's 220. So that's well over, 20% increase, which is just incredible for doing nothing except selecting a different startup menu. If you are planning on going with higher settings, it's not such big of a difference, but it still is improvement nonetheless. But overall, on some other settings, you're about 8.8% better overall. So I'd recommend at least looking into it, see if it's good for you. I definitely run it now. I get well over 240 frames per second. So now I want to run through these settings. This is about the same as it's been in the past, but for you guys that have never watched those videos, I do want to update you on a few things that have changed. So we're going to go over every single tab here. Graphics is the big one, but the other ones definitely do have some tactical advantages to it, like drones and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go over every single thing. So we're going to start with general. So the only thing you're really going to need on this whole thing is probably interface preferences. This is where you could turn off teammate names, outlines, or whatever. This is all just visual things, so scoring, everything like that. You can have it at cinematic, minimal, or normal. You probably just want to start with normal and take things off as you go, such as teammate outlines. Some people don't like that, or teammate names. Personally, I like to have one of these on just so I do not team kill, but that's all I really have for you guys here. Everything else is just personal preference at the end of the day. So that's that. Hit apply and go back in. And the only other things I have on is ping. And I also sometimes throw on the FPS here, so I get that, but I also have FPS in my top left, something you guys can't see, but it is from Steam itself that has the FPS. But drone after prep, I keep this on semi-automatic. So this makes it so I won't instantly leave my drone after the prep phase if I'm controlling my own drone. If I'm watching someone else though, I will instantly get put into the game. That's why how I like it. You could put it in a different way, but this is just how I find it to work really well. Match replay, I have this on. I do not know if this affects your FPS in game. I don't think it does, at least that I've noticed. So I just keep it at on. Text chat, I keep it at all. And now audio. All right, so this looks obviously a lot different from my last videos, but it is the same settings. They just changed how it looked entirely. So the only things you guys are going to want to touch, master volume, that's up to you and your ears. But I turn music volume all the way off for the lobby. I don't want to hear this, so I keep that off. Dialogue volume, I also keep this low as well. As for dynamic range, so sound in this game is awful. Year 6 still just awful. It's kind of crazy, but it always is changing. But night mode has always been my consistent one. I've done videos on what sound is the best, and it's always been hi-fi or night mode, but night mode definitely works the best with me, especially with open back headphones. If you guys want more information on sound, I have a video on that. It's very old, like over a year old, but it is still relevant. Everything else is just standard. And then we go into display settings. So the thing you guys are going to want to watch out for, obviously have the right monitor. You'll know if you have the right one. Keep this at 1920 by 1080. If you're on a really low end system, you can bump this down, but for the most part, you don't want to have to see that. So 1920, 1080, and then come down to this refresh rate and make sure that this is at your highest refresh rate that your monitor has. So for this monitor, this new monitor I just have is 280 Hertz, which is just insane. But this is my new one. I put it at 280 and it is great. Aspect ratio 1610 is what I like to do, just because I make videos and I like it to look good, and I just like to play with it like this as well, because I don't want to be changing it all the time. But as for which one I would do if I was looking for the competitive advantage, I think 4.3 or 3.2. 4.3 if you really don't care about the looks of the game, but 3.2 is a good in between. It really is a great in between. But a lot of pros run 4.3 and they lower their FOV a lot, and that's going to give them really large bodies. It's going to look like the bodies are pretty large. They're not any bigger, obviously, but it does make them look bigger, which is everything here. So that's just my recommendation. I'm going to keep it at what I have it at. And then the last settings here is menu display area and HUD display area. I don't touch these. The only thing I change is the brightness of the game, which is always set at 50. My monitor is pretty bright by itself, but I just go up 1 or 2. Now, if you have just like a normal monitor, you're probably going to be between 55 and 60. That's just my suggestion with your brightness. As for stuff that's a little more objective instead of just subjective, like a lot of this stuff is just your personal preference. The graphics, frames don't lie. And all of my settings are based off of what gets the best frames while still looking good, while still giving a competitive advantage. So this is not the settings. I'm going to be changing these, so don't just copy this down. But a lot of things can remain at low if you want them to, but there are a lot of things. Low versus ultra does maybe 2% FPS change, and that one of those is texture quality. It does not really affect your graphics card any. It's more so RAM, if anything. So I like to keep this above medium. This is something that if you benchmark though at different qualities, you're actually going to see that these are pretty much the same as an FPS. Texture filtering, this is one that will hurt your FPS more, so I would keep this at low as possible if you're trying to maximize FPS, and keep that at linear. LOD, I like to keep this above high. A lot of people are starting to catch on to this. The people that always just had this at low, they're starting to catch on that LOD actually does a lot for lighting. This helps with blocky objects, which does actually affect your gameplay, and also lighting. Shading quality, this one can stay at low. There's not much that's going to help you here. If anything, it makes the game look really good and really cinematic, but it does not help you any. It actually just creates more shadows, especially on tables and like nightstands and stuff in the game. It just creates these huge shadows. Shadow quality is a huge one. You're going to want this at least at medium. Now, anything over medium is just chiseling your shadows, so it'll have more detail in the shadows. Now, I don't really care to have detail in my shadows for a huge FPS drop, because shadows are a huge FPS drop. I like to just keep it at medium. If you have this at low, you're going to get no shadows for people. The only thing that shows up is static shadows. If it's on low, you're going to want medium at least. Anything above that is just extra. It's just the looks of the game at that point. It's not affecting your performance any. Now, as for some of this next one, so we're going to scroll down here and we're going to go down to reflection quality. We have all these at low. So low for reflection quality and low for VFX quality. This is all stuff that really will affect your FPS, especially VFX quality. You're going to have really big frame drops sometimes if there's big explosions or anything like that. This is all particles, debris, dust, anything like that. That's going to make it really look really good, but it does affect your FPS a lot and creates a really inconsistent FPS, which is just my least favorite thing, because that makes it really choppy, or really smooth, then choppy, smooth, choppy. I hate when it does that, so I just like it to stay consistent. Ambient occlusion, I keep that off. Lens effects, I keep that off as well. Bloom actually does do something effective. I think it does more downsides than upsides, but it does help you see Vulkans better. So that's the only reason I would ever turn these on, but I just keep it off because it's really not that big of an issue to see them for the most part. Zoom and depth of field, this is personal preference. Most people are going to want this off, okay? Now for me, I put it on. So I have a problem with being able to focus with my eyes in this game for some reason. And I always find myself looking everywhere except where my reticle is if I'm zoomed in. So if I put this on, it actually blurs the scope, the outside of the scope, not the inside, but just the outside. And it makes me kind of focus on the middle more. For most people, they hate this, but for me, I like it. It does not affect your frames like any. So that's just a personal preference thing, but I have it on. Most of you should have it off probably. Anti-aliasing, this is one that can go any way. I think it should be off FXAA or TAA. I would not go any higher, 2x or 4x. I would not touch that. So for my card, which is an AMD card, if I do TAA even at 100 everything, my screen's still blurry. It's a little bit blurry, but with NVIDIA, and I know a lot of people, even AMD people, TAA works great and FXAA looks terrible on their screen. For me, it's opposite. FXA looks good on my screen. It smooths out those edges, but I actually do prefer to just have it off. This makes more of a jaggy edges. You're going to see more of those squares. It's not going to mesh them together. TAA and FXAA will smooth out those lines. Just pick which one works for you in your system. They both get the same amount on the FPS wise, but off actually is the best technically. But if visually you just can't stand off TAA or FXAA, don't get anything above. No need for that. Now, we've done all the graphics. This is the big stuff. This is the big frame killers if you have these on all ultra or something. So this is what I think is the best right now. A lot of pros run something kind of similar to this, but now we're going to go into the other things. So controls, there are only a few things that I'll touch because everything else is just sensitivities and you don't need to copy mine. If you're going to copy someone, first of all, I wouldn't recommend, but I would copy someone a little bit better at the game, not just a high plat player. Go copy a pro or something. The only things I would copy is raw input, mouse, and keyboard. For the most part, you want this on. It's supposed to make it more reactive, but it does cause a little bit of glitching. So some people like this off. I really think this makes no difference. So just for the fact of not really glitching, off might be worth it. As for some other things, mouse scroll, gadget deployment. So this is something you might want to change. You're going to probably want to have this as advanced. This is going to let you be able to bandit trick and have more of a choice of where you're setting stuff down because it just doesn't just instantly set it down. Instead, you pull the gadget out and then have to click the button again or click a button again to actually put it down. Drone deployment, I have this as advanced, so I could throw the drone and kind of bait people into it without actually throwing myself into the drone instantly. If I have it on advanced, I could chuck the drone, bait people, they'll run out because they think I'm on the drone and then just get them like that. Other than that though, everything else is just your personal preference, like a lot of things are here. Accessibility, this is where you could change your optic color and just some other stuff that doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's the updated settings. Not really much changes on this. Now there are a lot of things that did change though in this last season where I haven't been posting videos much. And a lot of attachments have changed. So I'll come out with a video of attachments here before the next season because I definitely have noticed that attachments do need to be updated from my last video. So thank you all for tuning back into the channel. Sorry I haven't been posting, but thank you for joining me here again. And if you aren't yet subscribed, please do subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great one. Peace.
Don't wanna complicate ya.